WFH with two guys. Now here's Benny and Dennis.
As far as making sure your business is running well and not just simply having good skills in terms of what you do, you also need to be organized and you need to be productive. It's important, Dennis, that we do things in a way that's a little bit more systematic, that has we have some organization about it. But if we don't really have that mastered, then we could spend an entire day of doing stuff and it really hasn't moved us any closer to our goal.
No, and I think that hits on a lot of people across the gamut. And there are days that I'm really, really productive and I'm organized, and there's days that I kind of feel I flounder. And Cindy Sullivan was on with us back in September, and she's joining us now to go even deeper, because when she was on the first one, it was just organizing the time of your life. Today, she goes into the pillars, and there's 6 pillars that she's going to share with us that help you have a stable way to be more organized. And this is not only for your business life, but it's also for your personal life. That's what's great about this, that it applies to both sides of the equation. And today she gets into that. We're going to have her back in January as well to talk about some other topics that go even deeper after you hear this podcast today. That and you're going to hear I do more of the talking. Benny's pretty quiet on this one. Benny's busy writing notes because Benny was not
I was into this one.
We don't think Benny's very organized. So Benny's taking lots of good notes and trying to get himself organized so that he can be more productive moving forward. So hope you enjoy this one. Benny and I really like this one. I think you're going to learn some things that
and take
can help
advantage
you.
of her generous offer here too.
At the end, she's got an offer for you to take that assessment to figure out what pillars you're doing well and which ones you might have some opportunities on. So definitely take the survey and learn where your strengths are and where you've got some opportunities.
Cindy Sullivan is the owner and founder of cbSullivan Consulting and Organizing. This is a really good episode. Yeah, Dennis is right. I was a little bit more quiet on this one. Usually it's tough to silence me, but when I'm writing notes, it's good. So take a listen to this one. One of the things that's really important for me as not only a business owner, but just kind of in life in general is just organizing. Dennis, I have a really difficult time making sure I'm organized the way I'd like to be.
Well, I'm the organizer of my family and my group. I have a bunch of friends here this week, and I'm called the organizer and planner. So that's kind of my world, what I do. I like lists and like to check things off, but I know lots of people are chaotic and just kind of fly by the seat of their pants and then wonder why things don't work out. So organization to me is key. And so we have an expert joining us today, and Cindy's coming back. Cindy was on with us back in September. And so now it's later in the fall, and Cindy's back to talk even more in depth about what are those pillars that we talked about back in September, helping us be more organized and have a more productive life. So Cindy, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be back. Glad to talk about this topic. It's something I've dived into really over the past probably about 10 years when I really started formulating this idea of these 6 areas of productivity. And so I really love sharing it. I think it gives a new, fresh way of looking at this idea of how we can organize the time of our life. Productivity and using time well, there's a million different topics within it, and then we could be looking at all kinds of different strategies. And what I found with my clients as I was working with them over time, that I could be working with, a whole list of different people, and they're all working on different components, right? It wasn't that we were all just learning one process to do things one way. It's that we were really tying into the issues that were going on for somebody. So for instance, somebody was great at planning, but they just couldn't enact it. They couldn't stick with it in the moment. Another person might really be great at like powering through, task lists and projects, but they felt totally disconnected with the bigger picture as to why they were staying as busy. And yet other people really couldn't understand why they could never seem to get everything accomplished. And so through my work, I began to dive in with questions and really kind of figure out what was going on behind the scenes. So it wasn't just about what are we doing to fix it? How do you operate differently? But really, what's happening? Like, tell me more about this. And I developed this really detailed list of questions that I would begin any kind of new relationship with a new client. And as I would start to kind of study this idea, I would look at, wow, if we really aren't aware of how long our activities take, or our internal clock is kind of off, and it's really hard to gauge how much time to spend, then you really can't plan well, right? So some people weren't good planners, but what was really behind it was another issue, right? And so I expanded all of these questions. And as I got more and more in depth in this deep dive I do with my clients, I recognized that they really kind of fell into some distinct areas, some patterns. And that's where I began to see these 6 areas kind of come into view and really get clarity on it. And so that's where the 6 pillars came from. I recognized there was value in looking at all 6 pillars when I would begin my work with clients, because each of these areas help hold up our productivity. If any of them are weak, the other pillars have to take on more of the weight. So what I was doing was kind of figuring out, where are their strengths and where are their skills gaps? And so that's where the 6 pillars came from. So that's sort of the birth and the origin story of it. And then I can just kind of dive in and share a little bit about what's contained in each one. And then we'll kind of cover questions, if that sounds good.
That sounds fantastic. Yes, I'm going to be taking some notes here because I'd love to learn a little bit more. So tell us a little bit. Yeah, so go ahead, and let's start off. What's the first pillar, Sydney?
Well, the first pillar I have is planning. And that is really, it's a pillar that's about kind of intention. Setting intention as you get ready to set out in your day or your week. And what are we doing with forethought? So it can be about kind of identifying the activities you want to take, but it's also about creating the structure that you want to do it within. So it's sort of around creating an architecture for your time. In other words, if you're looking at the week ahead, kind of what do we want the week to hold? That container of time is going to include various activities. Some of them we need to be very specific and kind of prompt ourselves on. Others happen automatically, all of that. But what is that container of time going to hold? What does the architecture for it look like? So how are we doing that well?
So that's planning, correct? That's the
planning.
First.
And I think that one is really the bedrock. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that I work with my clients on doing and getting good at, and doing it well. Not just a brain dump, but really kind of thinking and strategizing around their time.
Yeah, and one of the things I saw today, I was watching some news channel, and they were in downtown New York, and the person was talking about how you determine what your day is going to be like when you get up. And it was all talking about that you could it's how you wake up in the morning and decide, is it going to be a good day or a bad day? And then they talked, and then from there it went into, if you have a plan, it's going to be a good day. If you don't have a plan, it's probably going to be chaos and going off the rails. So I think
it really
that
can be. And
plays into
there's challenges because so many people have such shifting sand. Things change all the time. And then you get that question of, well, why plan if everything changes? And of course, we could do a whole other podcast on that whole question because there's a lot of good things that come from planning. It's about distilling down and making decisions. Because really, ultimately, time management work, it's really about making decisions and focusing on them. That's really what it all kind of comes to. So planning is really that root, building that strong base of planning and how it works for you.
Number two is, so where are you going with that?
Number 2 is our internal time clock. So kind of time awareness, that passage of time. And there's kind of 2 elements of that. There's both that time awareness that some people have where they can just kind of gauge where they are in their day. Believe it or not, more difficult for some people. This was actually the last pillar that I kind of added to the mix. And then I sort of shuffled the order as I was kind of formulating everything, but because I have a really strong internal time clock. And so I can really easily quickly guess like, oh, it's been about an hour. I think I need to look up and, change gears, get into that second task, or it's about time to go. I very rarely get lost in tasks just because that's one that's stronger for me. And so it wasn't even on my radar really until I really dived into this and recognized that some of my clients really struggle to understand they'll lose time entirely. Very common with people who have ADHD. Time awareness and that time dysmorphia kind of thing really is a big problem. And it can also be a struggle when we multitask so much, or you're new and you just don't know how long things take. So you can't plan accurately, as I mentioned earlier, if you don't know how long things take. And if you're brand new to a role or you're taking on a new project, you can't gauge accurately. You have to kind of give yourself some grace there. But there are a lot of people who have spun so many plates at the same time, and they've got so many things going on at once that they're hard pressed to tell you how long anything takes to do. And so it's really, really hard to be accurate with planning when that's off. Our knowledge of how long time takes, and then that internalized piece of it that understands the passage of time that can kind of impact that internal time clock. And there are certainly strategies that we do when that's weakened to kind of hone that. And I know today we're really focusing on just kind of identifying that. And I'll tell you how you can learn more about now what do you do about it as we wrap up our call. So that's pillar number 2 is our internal time clock. Okay. Number 3, I'm going to hit on, it's long range goals. So these are our bigger picture, our bigger why. And it has to do with how we tie into the things that motivate us. So it might be, in fact, could be a couple of different things. I think there's different kinds of goals that we set on, and we use that term very broadly. But we have finish line goals in our life, which are the ones that get kind of the big G. Often in our goals, like, oh, I want to take that trip to Alaska, or I had the goal, over the past several years, I was going to finish and publish my book, which I finally did. So once I did that, it's done. I checked the box and I'm finished. But there's a lot of other goals that we factor into our life, which are, I've titled them lifestyle goals. It may mean that I want to live a healthy lifestyle. I want to be sure I stay connected to my family and friends, or I really want to further my education. Those aren't those things that you might one day just check the box and be done, but they're things we want to fold into our world. So I think when we look at our productivity, if we don't tap into the things that matter the most to us and see those through, then it's easy to be demotivated or really not operate at our maximum because we're not really energized, because these are the things that really kind of feed the fire for us individually.
Yeah, and I think that it's important for people to play in mind, as an employee or a person, look at that long range goal. Sometimes the things you're doing today, you may not like it, but it plays to help you get to that long-term goal of what you're doing. So let's say I want to travel Europe when I get older. Well, unfortunately, I got to save some money and work now to be able to do it, because unless I have someone generous going to donate money to me,
right,
you can't just go travel Europe, which might be the long-term goal. So you have to have that long-term, but then tie those short-term that you may not like, but you work through and know that you're getting to that end game of where you're trying to go.
And it's important to connect with those goals regularly, because the things that seem far away, it's really hard to stay motivated on those, because we don't get that. We don't get to scratch that itch today, and it may be years down the road before we can do it. So if we're not tapping into it and at least visiting that regularly, and that's a big part of planning for me, is, touching on goals periodically so we can pull in that energy and keep our motivation up really high.
Cindy, I would think on that long-term goal too, it's good to put some short-term goals that helps. Like if I want to get to Europe, maybe it's, hey, we do a trip to New York just to understand what it look, if I'm going with someone, how we're going to travel together and experience that. And so it gives you some motivation to get there, but then also keeps you going to that longer term goal. Those are different ways that you can achieve all these different things.
Right. And you're actually, you're feeding that energy when you do those little steps and those little things that might ultimately be getting you closer, or might just simply be keeping it open, whether it's, sign up to, listen to a couple of podcasts or blogs about European travel or things like that. We don't have to make it sometimes as monumental steps. There's really ways we can tap into that really keep us productive and moving forward, because this is where we get a lot of our energy when we're tapped in. So we want to keep that pillar strong as well. Our fourth one is what I call leverage. And this one is really it's a bit of a catch-all pillar. It is really broad, because how we leverage our time is how we act in the moment. So this is all of those categories of the way we self-manage ourselves kind of as we move through our day. So this is the group of skills that are things like managing interruptions, building our ability to focus, perfectionism, procrastination, and learning how to kind of tackle those things, and move beyond them. It can even be tightening up your communication so you don't spend a lot of time chasing down the information you need. So we can firm up our own skills and how we communicate with others so that we get back what we need in a timely way. So all of these things that deal with how we operate in the day. So really the two that kind of come closest to our day-to-day work are the planning pillar, planning and kind of the structure of our time, and then the leverage pillar. Those two are sort of where the rubber hits the road pillars so far. So leverage is a really big one.
I would think too, leverage also it's, the ability to delegate. So I just had someone come fertilize my yard because I love to fertilize my yard. I just don't have time to do it. So as we're recording this podcast, he's out here fertilizing. I've chosen to take some of my resources to pay him because I just knew I wouldn't get it done. And those are
Perfect
things
example.
ways
Yeah,
you can, leverage other people's experiences that they're better at than you are.
right, right.
Awesome.
And they all do just what they say. They get you that kind of think of how a lever works. You do some work here and the payoff is really big on the other end. So really thinking about how we manage ourselves in the moment is a really, really vital pillar. And then the last two are really kind of support pillars. And one of them is arrangement. That's our next one in our acronym there. We're spelling pillar if they haven't, kind of pulled that out. But arrangement is about how we organize ourselves. So part of my role, one of my certifications is being a certified professional organizer. And so, and there are people who are organizers who get into kind of the productivity world. I did it a little backwards. I was a productivity person who added organization, but they're absolutely, hand in hand, because if you can't find what you need, if things are laid out, just chaotically or have no order, then you're absolutely going to take a lot more time to do the things you need to do. And also both physical and digital clutter really begin to impact your mindset and how quickly we can and how well we can work in our space. I don't know if you've worked in a highly, highly cluttered environment before, but there's just almost a physical weight that can come to it when you can't find things. And it's hard to maneuver. And so things take longer. So it's really just about finding the right layout for things so that you can operate well, finding what you need when you need it. Some people think organizing is all about the aesthetic piece of it, decanting things at home and all that. And that's fine. That's if you're into that. But the bones of organization is about finding what you need when you need it. And what you make it look like is kind of the icing on the cake. And for some people, they're really into that. And some people, they're not. I'm more about function over the form part of it. So that's how it ties into productivity, is it really zaps your productivity when we're disorganized and can't find what we need well. And then lastly is the resources pillar. And that's what tools are we using, and are we using them well? I talk a lot about it when I'm doing time management specific kind of training. I'm dealing with what kind of tools are you using to help you manage your time. So planners, or it could be apps or client relation management, tools, or whatever your systems are that help you keep track of the things you've got to do and the work you're doing. So think if you're using a brand new piece of software in your job, how much longer it takes you when you're not functioning well in that world, or it doesn't work well for you, or it's just not compatible very much with what works for you. You're going to take longer to do it, and you're not going to be as efficient. So it's really about looking at the tools that supporting you, finding ones that are the best fit for you, and using them well, getting the training you need, getting planning tools that help you keep track of both your time and your tasks. And those are all going to keep things running well. So that's the highlight of all six. My acronym pillar kind of stuck there. We've got planning, internal time clock, the long range goals, leverage, and all of the things that fall within leverage, arrangement, and resources. And I hope that I've kind of shined a light on how they're really distinct from one another, right? And so each of these, it's helpful to really look under the hood to find out how each of these are doing, because you can't keep searching for the next, the next calendar app or task management app if your real weakness is in your time awareness or your internal time clock, or if you're just not connecting to goals. You can't shore up a pillar by, strengthening another one of its neighbors. So I really like and encourage people to do that holistic look at all six, and they can really hone in on where they can make some of the biggest changes and biggest improvements. And one of the ways I did that is I took that big questionnaire that I have used with my clients over the years, and I've actually recently been doing some refreshes after many years of use. And on my website, which anyone who's listening to this is welcome to go and see it, but I do have a 6 pillars assessment that will give you a scoring in each of the 6 areas and kind of let you know which one sort of jumps out as maybe one you might want to look at first to get the biggest bang for your buck in terms of tightening up some productivity techniques and looking for strategies to fix those. Yeah, it's kind of, we don't have to solve all the things at once, but look at where some of the biggest gaps are and where the cracks might be showing in your productivity. And that's a great way to tackle that work in getting more done and being more productive. And more strategies, if anybody wants to see that, I try to share lots of things and some education coming up on my website. My book that came out last year titled The 6 Pillars of Productivity, Strategies to Organize the Time of Your Life. That's available. It has a lot of strategies. It tells about the 6 pillars as well as what you can do to tighten each one up to kind of strengthen those, and whether or not it may be an issue for you, whether or not you do the assessment, there's some information there as a resource. Just hopefully, if this has spoken to you in a way that helps you kind of think differently about time and breaks it down a little bit easier than just all these random techniques we hear. Hopefully that's a helpful thing.
Yeah, it's funny because I say are frantically taking notes. I have to say, Cindy, I was like, this is some good stuff. And going through my mind, I'm thinking about something that you had said, that if one of the pillars is kind of weak, then the other ones have to kind of compensate. I'm thinking about this, and yeah, that's true. I was thinking about, oh my goodness, because I don't know where some of I don't have anything organized as well. I can't find it, and it has lengthened this particular project I'm working on. And so that really kind of hit home with me. So I have to say that you really kind of captured my attention.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to taking the assessment because I'm listening to you. And there's some of these I know I'm good at, but there's some of them I don't think I probably am as good at. And I would love that assessment to give me some insight of which pillars are weaker that I maybe need to focus on, help me be more productive.
And we all have some that are going to be more and less, right? And especially it's a snapshot. So, it might be that you're really leaning into one at one time and another time, you might be strength there, but it is so powerful to just understand that we don't have to make many huge tweaks. It's kind of like that book, Atomic Habits, where it talks about just making, starting those few things over and over, and how do we narrow it down and start strengthening the areas that really have the gaps. And I'd welcome you to see what you're going to see. And I've really enjoyed all I've learned since I released the assessment probably about 7 years ago now. And so this is the first time I'm doing a little bit of an update to it. And so I'm kind of like relaunching it again right about the time, maybe a little bit before this podcast goes live. So I welcome the chance to kind of share more about the 6 pillars for you and hopefully open up that tool and encourage all of you to use it and connect with me if there's ways I can help you learn about being more productive. I love this topic, and I think we have a gift of time, and it's not about pedaling faster. I think it's about changing gears so that we can keep moving in a way that feels very authentic to each of us, but we cover more miles, right? And we cross the finish line a little faster.
Cindy, share, what is your website so that the listeners know?
My website is cbSullivanconsulting.com.
And if anyone out there is listening and, they'd like to be able to ask for a little bit of guidance or some help, and maybe you could talk to them, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Well, they can absolutely hit my website up, and they're going to be able to contact me there. My direct email is Cindy, CINDY, at cbSullivanconsulting.com. They could just email me directly, and I do process all of those myself. One of these days, I'll get busy enough and probably have somebody help me with that. But right now, that's me. And so you will get me. And I would look forward to having any kind of conversation, educational opportunities that are coming up. I do some free webinars, so we can stay connected that way. And then there are other courses I roll out if somebody wants to really do a deep dive and learn a little more. I'd love the opportunity to be a resource.
Cindy, I've really, truly got so much out of this podcast. There wasn't anything I could have added. I thought that I just really wanted to hear what you had to say, and this was really good. And there's some great tips that I got out of this. So everyone, take advantage of Cindy's generous offer and see about taking an assessment. But thank you so much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate it.
You are so welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, Cindy, thanks so much.
Well, Dennis, that's another podcast in the can. I know that a lot of you all want to know how to get in touch with us. Dennis, what's the best way for folks to be able to get a hold of you?
Yeah, email's by far the best for me. It's Dennis J, so DENNISJ at worksolution.com, and that's WORX solution, no S at the end, so solution.com. Benny, how about you?
Yeah, same thing. Get a hold of me. My email address is benny@velocitytechnology.group. That's BENNY at velocitytechnology.group. Also, for me and Dennis, you can find us on LinkedIn. Look for us on LinkedIn. Our Work From Home with Two Guys is on LinkedIn. And we also have a website, wfh2guys.com. Look us up. You'll find all the past episodes and some little bits of information that maybe we don't get a chance to talk to on the podcast. We put it out there too as well.
And definitely share us with your friends and people in your network.
Absolutely. Let us know what we can do to make this podcast your podcast. Give us some ideas. And if you'd like to be a guest, let us know. We'll talk to you guys soon.
You've been listening to WFH with Two Guys. We'll see you next time.